Good afternoon, listeners. Thank you so much for listening to Lament of Hope podcast. It's always a gift to tune in with you guys, whether you're listening or watching this on YouTube. And I'm excited. I'm hoping to be able to do a couple of these in light of this film that's coming out. But some of you have probably seen, I would hope, seen the trailer for Jimmy, which is coming out in November 6th. And it talks about Jimmy Stewart's early life, when he was in the war, and then when he ended up filming It's a Wonderful Life, and how that was very impactful on his personal life. And so it's neat because it is a biop, I guess you'd say, but it's not his entire life story. It's just focusing on a very specific time lapse in his life, but it was very pivotal for the actor. And that's what they're really focusing on. And the person I have today with me is Aaron Burns, who's the director and producer of this film. And for those of you who've heard of like Beyond the Mask or War Room, The Forge, he was a producer of that. And he is the founder and leader of Burns & Co. Entertainment, which, based on the stories in the films, they're very human interest driven. They're very story driven. And so I'm really excited for this upcoming film, and that's starring KJ Apa as well. So, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be with you today.
So, I want to ask, just kind of to start out for you, what about this particular aspect of Jimmy Stewart's life did you think was important enough to make a film? Because most biopics I've seen, they focus so much on the entire life story. So, it's like 2.5, 3 hours, and they pick just like the biggest highlights or the biggest falls that someone has. And then at the end of it, it's like, here's the person. That's the summary. But for this, it is a very specific time frame. What was so important about this time frame that you thought, I want to make a movie about this?
The stories that I find the most interesting myself are stories of transformation. And as I look at Jimmy Stewart's life, everybody who knows him knows Jimmy Stewart, the actor, and all the big movies he made in his Hollywood career.
Yeah.
But the most pivotal era of his life was his wartime service. And for me, I honestly had no idea. I'd seen a bunch of his movies, loved his work, but there's that old saying, don't get too close to your heroes or you might be disappointed. I never looked into who he was as a human. I just, he's a performer. He's probably just performing. But I read an article that he wrote actually for Guidepost magazine a few years ago in which he laid out his journey from Hollywood to the war and then back again and the making of It's a Wonderful Life and how transformative both of those things were for him. And I said, wait, Jimmy Stewart fought in World War II? I had no idea. And not only did he fight in World War II, but did he serve, but he was at the front lines leading men and came home completely broken from PTSD. And at the bottom of himself, that's when Frank Capra brought him the It's a Wonderful Life script. And Jimmy's gift to the world of hope that film was also the making of it brought him the hope that he needed to continue on his journey. It was the beginning of his transformation and healing. So when I read all those pieces, I thought, my goodness, I've never heard this story. And I want to share this story with my kids and with the world around me. So that's where it started.
Why do you think now's a good time to release the film? Do you think that there's this specific time in history or where we are now, it's much needed, or what do you think?
So 80 years ago is when It's a Wonderful Life came out this fall. When we release our film, will be right around the 80th anniversary of It's a Wonderful Life. And something amazing about that movie, something that I enjoy asking the question, what makes things timeless? Why are there some stories that are told over and over again, some movies that are watched over and over again, and others that are not? Yeah. And with It's a Wonderful Life, it has that sense of timelessness. And why? I think that's a good question to ask anytime. But with Jimmy, with our film Jimmy, I see so much division in our world today, so much even in our country of America. There's so many people who want to put labels on others and then use the labels to fight against each other. And it's way more interesting to tell a story. You get way more clicks if it's negative.
Yeah.
and it's selfish and pitting one side against the other. And when I look at the story of Jimmy, he is someone who is beloved by, the most LA crowd and the central, middle America crowd. He's someone who old, cinephiles would love, the old Hollywood, fans, or veterans, and people who are uh, in the military today, all these
Yeah.
different layers of society. Jimmy was a person of faith. So if you're a Christian, you would see in his life themes that resonate with you. But if you're not, Jimmy, some of his very best friends were people who were diametrically opposite to him in his beliefs. One of his best friends was later in life was Hank Fonda, who was,
Mm.
complete opposite. But Jimmy found a way to love people who were different from him. And one story that I'll just share briefly, as Kelly and Judy, his twin daughters, were preparing to go off to college, their dad said, "Girls, we need to talk." And they're like, "Okay, great. What is this talking to be about? Is it going to be about money? Is it going to be about grades? Is it going to be about boys?" And he sat them down and said, "Girls, I want you to be kind." And that was the speech, and Jimmy lived that out. If you're a Christian, kindness is one of the fruits of the Spirit that shows you have God's love in your heart, and we share kindness with the people around us. But Jimmy found a way to do that consistently. And this is a story of a guy who had it all and lost it and went to the very bottom and found hope again. And I think our world is always in need of hope. And so
Yeah.
as you look at that idea of this guy who finds hope in the midst of his own darkness and then shares that with others through the rest of his life through living out that virtue of kindness, I think it's always a great time to tell a story like that.
I'm going to ask you this, and I hope it's not meant to sound offensive or mean in any way, but so many good, really good films, which I'm pretty expectant Jimmy is going to be, that tell good stories, that tell them well, they don't end up becoming big blockbusters. Some people will, once in a while, you get this really good film that breaks through everything, and people are just really impressed that it happened. But most of the time, these films are very quiet in their entrance and they're quiet in their exit, but the people who watch them, it's very profound. They really, really enjoy it. And I wanted to ask you, because the other films you've made, they definitely have made a mark, but when you're thinking of A-list blockbuster movie, that's not what your films have been. And I wanted to ask you, like, as a director producer, um, how do you become okay with that? Because I know you obviously have a purpose for why you make films, and so that's what's most important. But I can imagine after you do everything and all the actors that you can get and all of the production comes together, it's probably hard when you put something out that's really wonderful to not receive maybe all of the recognition you would want it to. And I just wondered, as a filmmaker, is it hard at times to balance the two of like, oh, I did something good, but not everyone in the world knows about it?
That's a very interesting and insightful question. So film is such a funny thing. There's one term that they described as showbiz. So if you've heard, oh, it's showbiz, if you've heard that term before. But if I was a oil painter, all I would have to buy is my paints and my brushes and my canvas, and nothing is holding me back except my own time and talent for making a beautiful painting. Or if I'm a composer and I have a piano, I can write the music and do it in whatever form I want. With film, it's the combined artistry of hundreds of people.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
to make it possible to bring that artistry together, you have to have the biz side of the show. So if there's no biz, there's no show. So part of it is finding stories that will be able to resonate with an audience to the extent that you can make the money back to pay the studio or pay the investor so you can continue going. So it's a very interesting blend of business and art and storytelling. So that there's that component of it, which is always kind of sitting in the room with you as you think about the movies and the stories that you want to tell. But another piece of it is it's very public. Everyone can watch your movie. and have their own opinion on whether it was a good movie or bad movie. And no one knows what compromises you had to make or choices you had to make to get there, but everyone watches it and informs their opinions. And then
Yeah.
what it does at the box office is also public information. So it's a very exposed place to be as a filmmaker and a storyteller. So at some point, kind of early on, you have to kind of be okay with that and realize your own personal internal calling and compass and goals.
Hmm.
And will the movies always turn out the way you want? Will the audience reception always turn out the way you want? Well, and not comparing myself to a Frank Capra, but he had movies that It's a Wonderful Life actually lost money. It bombed at the
Yeah.
box office. I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but
Yeah.
it came and everyone said sentimental hogwash. It's maudlin. It's not a great movie. It's too mushy and sappy. Well, it went on to become the number one inspirational movie of all time.
Hmm.
So sometimes critics are helpful, but also you have to listen to your own internal compass, so to speak, and be okay with what you're making, and always striving to get better. So I'll tell you one. Can I tell you a Frank Capra story real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so Frank was a Sicilian immigrant, dirt poor, came over, in the early 1900s, wound up fighting in World War One and going off to college, and really wanted to become a great man. He just had this driving ambition to do something great, and he ran out of money. Was down on his luck. The economy was down after World War One, so he stumbles into the filmmaking world, lies his way into directing this short film, discovers he's actually kind of good at it, and that becomes his career for the next decade or so. He in the early film world of the 20s and 30s, he starts making movies, and his number one goal is just to make money and get famous to prove to people that he has value. And he does it.
Hmm.
He wins an Oscar and he gets rich and he's on top of the world. And he says, okay, now I'm going to take a couple weeks off. Just tell everybody I'm sick and I'm just going to celebrate my wins here. And then actually the next day he gets sick. And over the course of a week, his health deteriorates very rapidly till he's lying in his bed. He's lost 25 pounds and he's on the
Wow.
brink of death. And someone comes into him and says, Frank, there's somebody here to talk to you. And he's like, so it's this dark room. This guy comes in and starts lecturing him. And there's a radio playing in the other room, and it's actually Adolf Hitler's voice giving one of his speeches. And this guy comes and he says, Frank, the radio is playing in the other room. That's Hitler. And he has tens of thousands of people who come to his rallies, and he spews his lies and his hate, and he fills the world with that. But you are worse than Hitler because you have millions of people who sit in a dark theater and give you 2 hours of their lives, and you have nothing to say to them. So what I recommend is you find something to say, and then you use the talents that God has given you to make a positive difference in this world, or you are wasting your life, sir. And then he leaves. And the next day, Frank starts to recover. A week later, he's back out of bed. And he asks his friend, who was this guy who came and lectured me last week when I was dying? This little short guy came and was telling me all this stuff. And they're like, nobody came to visit you. And so Frank, was it Clarence the angel? Who knows who it was? But Frank, from that moment, he decided to use his gifts and talents and opportunity to make a positive difference in the world. And you see the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and you see the It's a Wonderful Life. And as later in Frank's career, that the critics said, your movies are corny, they're too hopeful, they're too inspirational. What the world needs is hard grit and real life stories. And that's what is popular now. And Frank said, call my movies corny if you want. I'm going to call them Capricorn. But my calling is to bring hope and inspiration to people through the stories I tell. So I look at Frank, and I found that story inspirational to me, that he had a vision and a purpose of the stories he wanted to tell. And I hope that audiences will resonate with our story. And it's been really fun to see the pickup and the joy that people have had around the Jimmy trailer. So I hope that many people will see it and enjoy it. But whoever's supposed to, they'll be the audience that watches it. And it's the privilege that we get to have to tell the stories. And we have to trust the rest is outside of our hands and really be okay with that.
Well, and I was going to say, we have so many gritty films for sure, but they do end on a flat note a lot of the times. It's kind of like life is really sucky. Ugh. And then you're done. And it's like, that is true. But at the same time, there is hopefulness to it. There are aspects of life that are beautiful and good, and there are just these beautiful pictures of kindness, like you said earlier, and comfort and hope, and aspects of human nature that are very, like, pleasant to watch. And so no matter how anyone's life goes, there is something. And I think what you're saying, I mean, it's not like you're going to ignore. I mean, It's a Wonderful Life for me was always so compelling, I think in part because, and it became more so because I had a close family member try to take their life and I was
Mm.
there. And so then getting
Mm.
to see, I understood that kind of despair at the end of the film. And I have sense about really hard things that happen in your life and they just happen in succession and you're like, I can't take this anymore. And I
Hmm.
didn't find that to be corny because that's such a universal experience. But then it does end with hope, which is that he chooses life.
Yes.
And that is the right thing to do. That is
Mm.
the answer. Like, choosing life is never going to be wrong. And so
Hmm.
that is something that, like you said, it's like your film is going to show the hard. You're going to show the PTSD, which is an awful thing to face, especially for, I've never been in a war. I don't know what that PTSD is like. But
Hmm.
then you do show redemption and the hope because that is the way, that is how not only we want it to end, but how it ought to, it should end, That's like the creation, fall, redemption is like the arc
Hmm.
of everyone's story, and that's the hope. You don't want it to end on a flat, meaningless note, you know?
I feel like there's something, and when you think of what makes something timeless, that's the question that I've asked many times. What are timeless stories? The creation, fall, redemption arc is such a timeless
Mm-hmm.
story arc. And I think it's timeless because it's true. And I
Yeah.
think we know it's
Yeah.
true because we live it every week. We live it every day and we've experienced it. I don't know when this podcast will come out, but we just celebrated the 4th of July, which is America's 250.
Yeah.
And I read my kid, we listened to a reading of the Declaration of Independence. And it's such a fascinating, powerful document. And it starts with these truths that are self-evident, that we're all created, we're all equal, and we've been given these certain rights because we've been made specially. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it's obvious if you look around that people should have life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. Why? Because you've been created and you have value. Just because you exist, you have value because you've been created by someone who loves you and knows you and gave you a purpose. And I think
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life does such a good job of tapping into that idea that there's something more out there, and each of us was created for a purpose and does have value. And I
Yeah.
think stories that allow you to feel that in little ways, not hiding the fall part of it, not hiding the brokenness that's all around us, but allowing you to
Yeah.
explore that, but then again not leaving you there, and saying that there is hope and there is value in your small story. And then also, how does your small thread of the story plug into the whole grand tapestry of human history, that we each
Yeah.
have a role to play in the beauty of the hope. And as the saying goes, the light shines the brightest and the darkest moments. And I think that's those stories that have light punching through darkness. Those are the ones that are timeless and that, at least for me, resonate the most deeply.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you one last question, be respectful of your time, but can I ask, in directing this film, did it speak to you in any way? Like, did you start the film a little different than you ended it as a person?
So, to be totally honest, we're not quite done yet. So we're still in the last phase of the film, which we call post production. But I will tell you, so many moments on this journey have been fun for me, to get into someone else's world and to go back in time to the 1940s, and to see Jimmy and to stand on set. And we had a huge Christmas party, a 1940s Christmas party, where the real U.S. Air Force band came out and was playing I'll Be Home for Christmas, and we had the soldiers all dancing, and then we went to the battlefield, and we've got this B-24 built out, and we've got this half truck driving by, and it was so real. So those really fun moments, but then also deeply profound as you see and you put yourself, just like you, I've never been in combat, but to get to really think about it and put myself in the lens of those people who have. Some of those moments were very deeply impactful to me. And then we recreate portions of the making of It's a Wonderful Life through another lens. We show Jimmy making the film. And there's a moment that Jimmy references in his writings about the making of It's a Wonderful Life, where he says, as he was at the Martini's bar set, and he started to pray that iconic prayer, God, I'm at the end of my rope, that he felt and he saw the Heavenly Father's love for all the crying people in the world, that the world is full of crying people, but that he felt and knows that God loves each one of us. And so that we wove that into our script. And I remember sitting there, I'm directing, we have the monitor and the earphones in, and it's your job to make sure everything happens and you capture it just so. But as our actor started to do that scene, I started crying of realizing the brokenness that the world has in it, but also the joy and the hope that there's someone out there who loves everyone. And to get to see that through the eyes of this person was a very unique and rewarding journey for me. So I think I learned a lot of empathy through those things, and some more humility, and then also just gratefulness for the beautiful world that we get to live in, and to hope that I can share some of the kindness that's been given to me, to share that with the people around me as well.
Yeah. And like you said, like the Lord sees all the crying people. It's like there's meaning to your pain. I think if there is not meaning to one's pain, life is meaningless. Like really, It does get down to that. I mean, because none of the fun things can ever, just wipe away all of the sadness people have experienced, because it's deeply profound and hard, and like there's just not a fun thing that you put in top and you're like, oh, that'll take care of it.
There's some whipped cream on top of it, and now it's good. Still dirt under the whipped cream, guys. So
I love that. That's so encouraging. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. I know you have to go off, but I'm so excited about this movie, and I'm excited to hopefully be able to put little more interviews as we go and get closer. And I'm excited to take my husband to see it. I saw the trailer and I ran to my, because I'm the one who finds all the new movies, not my husband. He's just like, he goes, but I'm the one who sees them. And I was like, there's the movie coming out about Jimmy Stewart. And he was like, I didn't know that. So I'm really excited to bring more of this to my audience and for people to go.
Thank you so much. I think, just based on our conversation here, I feel like the kind of stories that you like to tell, the kind of thoughts that you like to explore, we do a lot of those exploring moments in this, and some of the contrast between the peaks and the valleys, and when are you performing and when are you being real, and then what does that look like, and how do you wrestle with success and failure all wadded up at the same time. So I think you'll enjoy it, and look forward to more conversations.
Yes, I will. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.